Good morning to all present on this colloquium. Fourth International Colloquium of Studies on Africa, Afro-American Contemporary Relations in an Emerging Heterogeneous World Order. First of all, we thank all the people who have made this colloquium possible. My name is Norihisa Arai. As a part of the university program in Asian and African Studies of National Autonomous University of Mexico, I will be moderating this panel. Today's first panel is called Africa and the South-South Cooperation between Latin America and the Caribbean. And we have two speakers, Verónica Gómez and Agustina Marchetti. First, Verónica will speak for 20 minutes. And then Agustina will speak for 20 minutes also. Afterwards, we will have an open session for questions and comments. So without further explanation, we will proceed this presentation. First, I will lead Veronica's brief biographical sketch. Verónica Gómez holds a master's degree and a bachelor's degree in international relations from the Faculty of Political and Social Sciences of the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM. She currently serves as an associate professor at the Center for International Relations of the same faculty. She is pursuing her doctorate in the graduate program in Political and Social Sciences at UNAM. And she is a candidate for the double degree PhD program with the University of Groningen in the Netherlands, where she previously completed the research stage during her master's studies. Her professional experience includes collaboration with the Sustainable Energy Program of the German Development Corporation and the Energy Program of El Colegio de Mexico, Colmex, as a research assistant. She has worked as an independent consultant for national organizations in Mexico and international organizations, including the World Bank and the Environmental Defense Fund. Her research focuses on energy security, environment, international cooperation, geopolitics, and regional studies with a particular emphasis on the European Union. She has presented at numerous national and international conferences and has published articles in academic journals and books. So please proceed.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And thank you too for this invitation. Okay, in order to start my presentation, can you hear me well? Okay, thank you. I would like to start by explaining what we mean by energy policies and where this idea came from, because I think this is important to understand the context, to analyze what are the implications for countries in the South, like Mexico and Egypt. Next, I can change, it's here. Okay, thank you. Okay, like an international framework of green energy policies. In some point of history, no long time ago, as you can see, political decision makers realized that natural resources are not infinite. Consequently, they started to develop international conferences to seek a global agenda for change. In terms of the demand by the World Commission of Environment and Development in the United Nations, where the concept of sustainable development was born in 1987, in a publication called Our Common Future. So, however, 15 years before, in 1972, took place the first United Nations Conference on the Human Environment for the Stockholm Conference, as we know it. This was the first moment when experts warned about the excessive use of certain natural resources, like including hydrocarbons. I mean oil, natural gas, and coal, and their impact on the environment. The second great international reference is the Earth Summit, or the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, that took place in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1992. During the event, it was agreed for the first time to establish an international cooperation plan to address environmental impacts through the signing of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. That came into force 2 years later, and with that, the COP was created. I don't know if everyone knows the COP, but the COP is the supreme decision maker body of the convention. All the states parties to the Convention of Climate Change are represented in this organization, this COP, where they review the implementation of the convention and any other legal instruments adopted by the COP. So currently, 28 editions of the COP have been held in various venues of the 170 members of the convention, most of the states. But the most relevant has been the COP 21 in 2015, from which the Paris Agreement was adopted. And also, I hope everyone knows or hears something about the Paris Agreement, but it's the largest, because it's the largest instrument of international cooperation on climate change, in which the Paris seeks to undertake ambitious efforts to combat climate change and adapt to its effects, or that's why they say in theory. Its main objective is to limit global warming to below 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial levels. That's mean in the 19th century. And maybe you can ask what does this have to do with Africa and Latin America? Well, and in practical terms, these international cooperation mechanisms have served, among other things, to promote cooperation from north to south. For example, as a result of the COP 21 and the Paris Agreement, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals were created. Okay. And in the energy sector, and in the framework of the green energy policies, we can find 2 specific goals or objectives about energy sector. The first one is the 7th goal, affordable and clean energy, and the second one is the 9th goal, climate action. These two goals are, the main characteristic of these goals is that they present the cooperation as a necessity for of the North countries to help the Southern nations, because the global warming issue, it's an international problem. And in the South, we don't have the technology or the money to develop renewable energy projects to help the environment. And at least this is what we can see about this lecture of the Sustainable Development Goals. But this is now the only instrument about that. There is another called the Joint Fund for the Sustainable Development Goals, that is a strategy financing mechanism promoted by the United Nations, mostly by the General Secretary at the United Nations, and whose objective is the adoption of economic, social, and environmental policies to lead to the creation of financing strategies that accelerate process on the Sustainable Development Goals at the global, regional, and national levels. So among the countries with highest funding from this joint fund are, for example, Fiji, Indonesia, Kenya, Madagascar, Malawi, and Malawi. And if you can see this map, maybe you can find a pattern in this that shows certain regions or countries denominated like South or Global South with more investment in it. So I try to explain with this that, or with that, that there is a common issue between all of these cooperation mechanisms and investments from the international level. But before to start with the South-South cooperation between Africa and Latin America and these two specific countries, Mexico and Egypt, sorry. I would like to remark the importance of the energy resources, because the energy sector is the support of capitalist development. Most industries and sectors depend on it. The consumption of energy worldwide has increased radically since the Industrial Revolution, and more recently since the Second World War. Fossil fuels are the primary means of subsistence for capitalist industries and essentially for most or our activities. I always said in conference that without energy resources, we couldn't be here in this room with internet, with electricity, doing this. So this is kind of important, I mean, this sector. But I also would like to do a difference between energy resources, because there are one thing that is the primary energy consumption or primary energy sources, and there is another that I will show you. But this primary energy consumption statistics, distinction about the primary energy, sorry, because the primary energy is basically what I was saying before. I mean, the support of the capitalists. All the industries need some energy source like coal or oil to develop their industries. For example, the plastics or the cement to build buildings is have their basis on the fossil fuels. That's why fossil fuels have a strong participation on this first graphic to the left. And as well as in Africa, you can see in the right side of the slide, Africa statistics are very similar with the world statistics. And in Central and South America, because the Energy Institute, the source of this information, consider Mexico as part of the North region of America. But the Latin America statistics, you can see there is a little more renewable energies in the energetic mix. However, this is the other distinction I would like to do, because for example, okay, if I show you this other graphic to the left, you can see that there are more renewable energies in this graphic, right? But what is this is about? This graphic is from the International Energy Agency, and this is only electricity energy. And the graphic before I show you, it's primary energy. Primary energy, like I said before, it's basically all the resources, all the hydrocarbon resources we need to develop any industry. But electricity, it's only one part of this sector. And also electricity represents only 20% of the total energy that we consume from the energy sector. The other 80% is basically fossil fuels. So I like very much this phrase here: obtaining energy requires energy. I hear that phrase from another conference, and I love it because it's true. We need energy to create renewable energies. And there is a consumption before behind, sorry, these green energies that we see, and that the Paris Agreement and other international instruments try to present like the unique solution for global warming. So and what happened then in the other regions of the world? This other graphic you can see shows very huge gap between some regions around the world. For example, Africa, all the continent, represents the lower levels of energy demand or consumption. But for example, North America, with United States, the United States as a leader, it's the most region that consumes energy. And Latin America, it's the first, in the third place. So when I see this data, I also can relate it with greenhouse gases emissions, because if you consume a low percentage of energy, also your emissions of the greenhouse gases are low. And this is one of the arguments that these international organizations have around the investment in the South. No, so as you can see here, the main countries or regions with most greenhouse gases are China, with 27% of the global levels, United States with 12%, and the European Union, 27 countries, with 6.5%. But Mexico has only 1.3% of the emissions, and Egypt have only 0.7%. So there is, like in the graphic before, a huge gap between these statistics. And like I was saying before, I am asking why or what is the important to insist in adopt green energy policies in these countries when the countries from the north are consuming too much energy and they produce too much emissions. So in order to pass with these two specific countries, I would like to say in this point that this is part of my of the beginning of my PhD investigation. So at this point, I have more questions than answers. Spoiler alert, so sorry. But I think it's important, this kind of topics in the South-South cooperation and in countries like Mexico and Egypt, because Mexico and Egypt represent a strategic party in the geopolitical play, right? Because Mexico connects not only with North America, but also with Latin America. And Egypt is the center of a region, enormous region, like the Mediterranean region, all the African continent, and this Middle East. So, but also these two countries have some similarities in the relationship with other actors. The other region I'm working on it's the European region. So in their relationship, Mexico and Egypt with the European Union, for example, we can see that there is some issues before or behind, sorry, these investments, because these green investments in energy sector, because for example, in the case of Mexico, around 40 European companies are involved in the energy sector in Mexico. And the investment in this sector is almost 50 billions of dollars. So And in the Egypt case, the total of the investment in the energy sector, it's around $40 billion. And there, in words of the European Union, these invest are focused on climate and economic cooperation. So what can we do as South countries, and what South-South cooperation can help with all of these that I've been presenting to you. And also I would like to point that, but all of this, I do not mean that the energy transition is negative. However, I consider countries such as Mexico and Egypt have to be key players in the sector, but have oil and natural gas in their territory, in addition to a climate that allows to develop of renewable projects. So as a solar energy and rivers that facilitate hydroelectric energy. I think that they should strengthen their ties and create energy policies tailored to their needs and those of their populations, considering the resources they have, and not just adopting a green model from the global north. Because while countries of the South, as we do, receive support and or help to promote our energy transition through technologies and companies from the North itself has reopened its coal-fired power plants in the context of the Russian and Ukrainian war. So the global continues with some fossil fuels, but in the South we should or we'd have to do this energy transition with the help of the North. So the South-South cooperation needs to be different and have to question why the highest levels of population and energy consumption are in the North, but we in the South need more foreign investment in green policies. And finally, some conclusions, as I said before, are questions more than answers. Do we really need green energy policies in the South? The short answer could be yes, we need it. I think all the world need it, but differently to that are kind of imposed in our countries. But also, should the North change its consumption? Yeah, also they have to change. But what if they don't do it? We need to do something else, and I think the South-South cooperation can help with that. So finally, I think it is important to bring these topics to the table and discussion because our necessities as global South countries are different to the Northern. And more important, the consequences to adopt green energy policies which doesn't correspond to our context too, because I didn't talk about the consequences, but there are many social and economic consequences for this adoption of the green energy politics from the North. And with this, I finish my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Veronica. We'll proceed to next presenter, to Agustina Marchetti. I will read her biography. So Agustina holds a PhD in international relations from the National University of Rosario. She was a CONICET doctoral fellow between 2015 to 2021, and she's a postdoctoral fellow CONICET actuary from 2023 to 2026. She holds a higher diploma in Latin American and the Chinese studies, Flaxo, Argentina. She's coordinator of the Latin American Africa Studies Group and researcher of the program of studies on South-South relations and the cooperation of the UNO. Member of China CONICET for the strengthening of research and cooperation with China and Asia in social sciences and humanities. Also, she's member of the Africa Department of the Institute of International Relations of La Plata. She's member of the Center for the Study of International Relations of Rosario. Also, she's a professor of the International Relations degree at the Faculty of Political Science and International Relations of the UN Universidad Nacional de Rosario, and a postgraduate teacher at the Catholic University of Cordoba. In the thesis workshop, in the PhD in International Relations, and in the PhD in International Relations at the National University of Rosario. She has taught at the master's degree in Integration and Cooperation of the Center for International Relations Studies of Rosario, at the master's degree in Policy Linkage with China, at the Autonomous University of Querétaro, Mexico, and at Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, Greece, among others. So please start your presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you very much for this invitation. It's really important for academic of the Global South to exchange this in this kind of events. So I'm really honored to be here with you. Well, I will share my screen. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, the title of my presentation is South Cooperation Between Latin America and Africa, a snapshot. In order to talk about this topic, I would like to make a first comment regarding the difference between South-South relations and South-South cooperation. Since South-South relations unfold naturally between public and private actors with a state or transnational basis between different regions, or in this case, we are talking about Latin America and Africa. We can also include Asia, and it can involve conflicting interactions in the face of divergent interest. But when we talk about South-South cooperation, we are talking about a political construction that by its very nature requires certain basic common assumptions among the states involved. And why this is important? Because in this presentation, we're going to talk about the domestic and systemic conditioning factors related with the South-South cooperation between Latin America and Africa. So basically, South-South cooperation takes place between governments with converging positions related mainly to development objectives and to the formation of alliances for the purpose of influencing global issues. In this sense, when we go back to the definition of the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation, here it comes to be like a manifestation of solidarity among peoples and countries of the South that contributes to their national well-being, their national and collective self-reliance, and the attainment of international agreed development goals, including, for example, 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals. So the presentation of Veronica, I think that it's a great example of what I'm talking about. In this sense, the guiding principles of the South-South cooperation are respect for national sovereignty, national ownership and independence, equality, non-conditionality, non-interference in domestic affairs, and also mutual benefit. why is this important? Because when we think what does the South-South cooperation expresses, we need to think basically in this scheme. I mean, when we are talking about South-South cooperation, we are seeking like share employer interest of, I mean, where the different governments of the South seek to strengthen economic interdependence. They promote trade and political integration processes, and they address to global and strategic issues that promote stability in the international system. That at this time we are like facing not a very not an international system with a great stability, right? So when we talk about South-South cooperation, it's important to say that the positions are mainly reflected in global institutions and in development projects and programs, as Veronica said in her presentation. I mean, different actors of the South need to work together in order to gain or to be like better positioned in Veronica's presentation was regarding green policies. That I think that this is, I mean, we can apply this for everything in South-South cooperation. And another point is trade and investment agreements. I mean, they need to work together in order to gain a better position in an international system. So here is the point. Also, domestic and systemic conditioning factors must be considered because they have an impact on the South-South cooperation. In this case, we're talking about Latin America and Africa, but it might be applied to South-South cooperation in every areas, dimensions, and actors. So what happened with the South-South cooperation, and which was like the timeline, no? In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there was the emergence and subsequent rise for the South-South cooperations, considering that there were some domestic and systemic factors, like, for example, decolonization of Asian African countries that mark the emergence of the South as an international actor. In the 60s, we have, in 1955, we have the Bandung Conference. In 1961, we have the non-aligned movement. In 1964, the Group of 77. And these were all instances in the international systems that made, that gave a chance for the countries of the South to use South-South cooperation as an opportunity, because they were all countries that were facing some similar interests or conflicts, okay? What happened in the 80s, or mainly in the 90s, is that with the globalization in the 90s and all the things that all the global South countries need to face was again an opportunity to give to find a chance to coordinate policies. But what happened in the 90s is that with the end of the Cold War, the advance of the globalization process and the implementation of the neoliberal policies automatically diluted the multilateral actions of the South, because there were so many effects, internal and complex internal situations that the Latin American countries that had to face, that the South-South cooperation stayed like between brackets. And the same happened with the African countries that had fallen prey to the Afro-pessimism and the donor fatigue. So here we can see how in those cases, the international or systemic conditioning factors directly impact on the South-South cooperation policies of the different countries. In the 21st century, we can see that it was like a resurgence of the South-South cooperation, that in this case, it was strongly driven by emerging powers, being China the most active actor. It was not the only, but for sure it was the most active actor in the international system. But one thing that I would like to highlight is that beyond the ups and downs and the different governments and the different narratives, there's one point that it's really important to take into the account. Latin American countries institutionalized South-South cooperation in different specialized agencies or different areas of South-South cooperation. So we in the first decades of the 21st century, we can talk about like how can you say, it was like reformist narrative regarding the international development cooperation system. So it was like a combination of the internal and exogenous factor that underpinned the South-South cooperation in line first with the MDGs and then with the SDGs. So here, despite all the problems and negative omens that we can see or that we can highlight, the 21st century brought a renewed hope for the South-South cooperations between these regions on different scales. And when we are talking about the different scales, we can see it in bilateral cooperation, multilateral cooperation, minilateral cooperation, and interregional cooperations. So in these different scales, we can see different actors, different themes, and different modalities of cooperation. Regarding both regions, we can say that in the bilateral cooperation, Brazil in Latin America and South Africa in the African continent were like the main actors that carried out the South-South cooperation programs. And the minilateral cooperation with the IPSA Dialogue Forum, or the different countries that participate in the G20 financial group, were like another instance where different countries from Latin America and Africa could be part of the South-South cooperation. Interregionally, we can distinguish three instances. It is the ASPA summit, that is the Association of Cooperations of South-South cooperation with Arab countries, the Africa South American summit, that it's like the one that we call ASA summit, and the Zone of Peace and Cooperation of the South Atlantic, where Latin American countries and African countries participated in different I put there, as you can, I don't know if you can see it, but we have like most of them were between 2005 and, well, except for the last of Zone of Peace and Cooperation of the South Atlantic, they were between the first and the second decade of the 21st century. Okay, so what I'm trying to say with this is that if we consider the international or systemic conditioning factors, we can say that they were like different factors. In 2008, we have the international financial crisis. Between 2005 and 2014, the rise of the commodity prices. Then we have in 2014 the drop on the commodity prices. And there are so many international or systemic conditioning factors that impact directly in the ups and downs of the South-South cooperation. What happened in the Argentinian case? We have like very clear when we have regarding domestic factors, domestic conditioning factors, we have like, we need to distinguish when we have left governments and when we have far-right governments. For example, between 2003 and 2015, the South-South cooperation had a high profile in line with the government's postulates and a strategic tool for deepening bilateral relations, regional integration, and partnerships in solidarity with other development countries. So the South-South cooperation in all these years functioned like a tool in order to consolidate a more balanced, equitable, and multilateral world order. But then we had another government, that it was Mauricio Macri's government between 2015. And although if the profile was lowered here because he was a neoliberal government, in Argentina, it was carried out the Pava Plus 40, that the Pava Plus 40 was an instance that it was held in Argentina because of the anniversary of the Plan of Action of Buenos Aires to promote and implement technical cooperation among developing countries. So it sounds like paradoxical because if the Mauricio Macri's government has like lowered the profile of the South-South cooperation, he held this Pava Plus 40 conference. So what it seems is that even if it was sustained from the narrative, it didn't have its correlate in the budget that the government in that occasion designated for the South-South cooperation. It was like the South-South cooperation sounded like an instrumental tool in order to position Argentina in the international system. And then we have the Alberto Fernandez between 2019 and 2023, that again we had a left government, that there were some systemic conditioning factors, like, for example, the COVID crisis in 2020 and the Russian-Ukraine war, that again impact directly on the South-South cooperation policies that the government implemented. In this government, for the foreign minister moment that it was Santiago Cafiero, created the Argentine Agency for International Cooperation and Humanitarian Assistance, White Helmets, as a decentralized agency of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Worship. That as soon as the next government came, that it is the most disruptive president that Argentina had in the last many decades. That is, of course, from the far right, extreme right. The South-South cooperation was dismantled and the agency was eliminated in line with the model of pragmatic acquiescence carried out by this government. So in Argentina, we have one curious information. It is that since 1992, we have the Fondo Argentino de Cooperación Sur-Sur y Triangular, that we refer to this institution like FOAR, that was created as an articulator of the horizontal technical cooperation actions dependent from the foreign minister, and it became the centerpiece of Argentinian cooperation. And this forum, the FOAR, is still in operation. So it is still working, even if Javier Milei's president eliminated the agency for South-South cooperation. And although during the 21st century, all the actions of the FOAR extended both in numbers of projects and in destinations. Of course, that Latin America was the first, like the first origin, but then African countries also were like part of the different programs that we had in the prospection of the Argentinian South-South cooperation. And between the different areas, the agro-industry is the most prominent area of cooperation. So in order to conclude, I would like to remark some things that we should think the South-South cooperation domestic. Intermestic, taking the Manning's concept of profoundly and inseparably both international and domestic. That's why it's intermestic. So it is a combination of domestic and systemic factors that encourage or delay South-South cooperation between both regions. That as it says, in troubled waters, fishermen profit. This means that there are opportunities for cooperation, but always they will be conditioned by the international system context and domestic conditions. Governments and the hierarchy that these different governments, depending of their ideology of if they're from the right or from the left, they give to the South-South cooperation. So in globally terms, we need to highlight that China has a protagonic role in the South-South cooperation with both regions. If we take into the account that with Latin America, they created the China Select Forum, and Africa, they have the FOCAC, that is the Forum on Cooperation with China and African countries. So as an emerging power, I think that he became like the leader of the South-South cooperation with both regions. But in Latin America, Brazil was undoubtedly the most active country in South-South cooperation in general and with African countries. So in the next decades, South-South cooperation will continue to develop, but maybe at different scales or new scales, different themes, modalities, and also among different actors. So it will then be up to Latin American countries and African countries or African nations to overcome internal and external constraints and to take advantage of favorable circumstances to deepen their exchanges of resources and capacities, and thus together generate possible margins of autonomy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So now we can proceed open session for questions and comments. Any comments or any questions will be welcome. Yeah, wait for a minute.
Good morning. It's still morning, right? Yeah, okay. I had a question for Veronica. I'm interested in this idea of South-South, of course, also what we were just hearing, but I didn't see in the renewable energy, you mentioned that there we have a lot of solar, but I didn't hear you say that anything about offshore wind development. And do you have any information or ideas about if that is something that should be done? I mean, there's so many coasts here in Mexico, and every time I go to the coast, there's a lot of wind. So I'm wondering, and there's a lot of new developments and a new floating turbines and nature-based turbines that sort of help the flora and fauna of the oceans. And so I'm wondering if that's something you see as an important step forward in terms of developing new renewable energies. And second part is, do you see the possibility of connecting with sort of Pemex and other sort of traditional energy sectors here as they move to what I would hope would be a just transition, right? I mean, what are the mechanisms, or what are the ways that you could see this kind of transition occur, and who might be the partners in doing that?
There is any in online? Okay, so please answer.
thank you so much for the questions. I think they are a very good questions because yes, I think it's necessary to do the things different than the way we are doing right now. So and the first question about the offshore wind. Yeah, I know about that. I mean, as I know, this is kind of new in Mexico because yeah, we have a lot of potential. Most of all in the southeast of the country, in the Yucatan Peninsula, I think, and in the international framework, this kind of energy particularly is one of the best because they don't this energy don't have too much impact in the population. For example, the I forgot the term, but the other wind energy in the land, it's around too many problematics in Mexico, for example, in the in Oaxaca, no, in all the istmos, Tehuantepec. But offshore wind energy is one of the best that we could do. However, I will continue to insist that we need also development or technology development like a Mexican technology because we have a lot of potential. We have a very exceptional engineers and that could help to not depend from the outside investment. So yes, I will love to see all of these technologies development by Mexican people here in the Mexican territory because the impact it's very low. Sorry. I will lie if I tell you yes or not because I really don't know, but it's an interesting question because yes, I think I don't know. I defend the interdisciplinary studies. So it would be great if we have some kind of union with the energy department or something as a social scientist to develop something like that could help in real terms to the Mexican people and the Mexican development. And the second question about this cooperation or partnership with Pemex, for example. I think also it's interesting because as I said in my presentation, we need to change the way that we see the energy transition. And there are too much comments and the international area about the fossil fuels. No, it's like talk about the devil. I don't know. And but as I said too, countries from the north are develop their economies with oil and coal. China, for example, is the most contaminated country based on coal. So for me, it's I couldn't think another way without fossil fuels, but in a responsive way, because yeah, it's a sector, it's a tricky sector, but we depend on it at the end. So it could be great if Pemex, CFE could work together with the renewable sector. Thank you.
Any question? First?
I would like if Agustina explain better IPSA, IDSA, IPSA. Is this was only Brazil or it was also or from the south part of South America?
Actually, when we talk about the IPSA Dialogue Forum, we're talking about India, Brazil, and South Africa. That it was a dialogue forum that it was installed in 2003, and then they have different summit or dialogue forums. But the point was that when the BRICS forum gained importance in the international system, like the IPSA forum lowered the profile, because they were like 3 members of the BRICS that were also in the IPSA group. And I think that if we need to distinguish one of these forums or this group of countries that gain like importance in the international system in the last decades, we need to talk about BRICS and not about IPSA. With this, I don't mean that it's not important. That the point is that the presence of China in the BRICS makes that the BRICS group unnecessarily, it's important by itself. China, it's important by itself. So wherever China is, it's important nowadays.
Another question? Thank you.
Yes, first of all, thank you both for your presentations. They were very interesting and very insightful. I would like to make more like a little reflection and then maybe a little question to Agustina. We were talking since yesterday about these relations between Latin America and Africa, and how the North, you said it a lot of times during your presentation, interferes a lot with these South-South relations and even with these South-South cooperation initiatives and institutions. So we know also that Latin American region and the African region especially present a huge gap in the energy sector. And how can we envision another kind of South-South cooperation model? Because I think the main problem of this model of South-South cooperation that evolved from the G77 and all that is that it remains very highly state-centric. And I think that the South-South cooperation could be strengthened if we can move beyond this framework of a state-centric hegemonic view of these relations. I don't know, maybe if there's at some point the member of these of international regional associations can overcome their logic of gathering only by the state institutional means. No, maybe as Babatunde Fagiagibo says, if it's possible at some point to transcend the member states of these associations. This was, I don't know if I make myself clear, but it's like my little question and reflection.
May I now?
Yeah, please.
Well, actually, I agree with you 100% that South-South cooperation, it's like interfered by the North, of course, because that's why when in my concluding thoughts, I presented this idea that maybe it will be another kind of South-South cooperation with the new modalities, new members, new actors, and new scales. I think that it is like shifting a little bit, not to the North, but to China, because when you analyze the South-South cooperation as China itself, they think that they're part of the South. Even that we can debate that in another moment, but they talk about themselves as South-South cooperation, okay? And what they do, they have in their official discourses, and they talk about South-South cooperation. So when you look back in the in the 21st century with Africa and with Latin America, the main actor of South-South cooperation, it is China. And you can see that with the establishment of the FOCAC Forum in the 2000 year. And you can see that also, can I share my screen one more minute?
Yes, of course.
Just a minute. Let me show you one, okay. Let's do this. Oh. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, this is what I'm trying to say. In the 2000 establishment of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation was like a milestone in the history of the relations between two regions, I mean, between Africa and China. Some years, I mean, this like functions as a dialogue mechanism for bilateral and multilateral cooperation. This means that the main counterpart for the African nations, it's China. The same happened with Latin America. If we go to the, just a minute. If you, as you can see here, from the 2000 onwards up to 2021, we have all these instances of South-South cooperation between China and the African countries. The same happened with Latin American countries that, I mean, this was like a model that then Latin American countries replied in the relations, in the South-South cooperation with China. If you give me 1 minute, I will show you another. Here, can you see this? You have in 2008, the first policy paper. In 2015, the first forum on community of Latin American, Caribbean states and China. So in each one of these forums, they have been held 3 up to now. They were like the basis of the South-South cooperation of Latin America. And in the FOCAC Forum, that is the basis of the South-South cooperation between China and Africa. So I think that the shift is going in that way. I mean, it's not maybe like before that they were like traditional powers or European countries in the colonies that were like the main actors in the cooperation, but now it's shifting to the emerging powers. I think that is the one of the main changes that we can identify in the 21st century. I think that, I don't know if that answered your question, that
Yeah, thank you.
you're welcome.
But well, I have been reading that it's the center of the policy center of Morocco. I don't remember very well the name, and they have a bulletin every week, and they are talking about the Atlantic South cooperation, but especially with well, Morocco, and I think Morocco is the leader of that cooperation. But I would like to understand if you can explain me a little bit more. This Atlantic South cooperation, o sea, it means that in no cooperation with the North, it's Atlantic South cooperation.
Well, the SOPACAS is an instance of cooperation between the coast, I mean, Latin American coast and African coast. That is because you were reading about Morocco, because they're like the different how do you say, summits that they were held. It was, I mean, that is an instance of cooperation that was born in 1986, if I don't made a mistake. So the point is that the zone of peace and cooperation of the South Atlantic, that is known in Spanish. We know it as sopagas or sopegas. In the 21st century, it was like in 2007, 2013, and 2023. I mean, there were 10 years that there were no meetings, no summits of that zone of peace and cooperation of the South Atlantic. But the countries that are part of that zone of peace and cooperation of the South Atlantic are only the ones in the coast. Okay, so we don't have between both regions so many instances of bi-regional cooperation. As I mentioned in my presentation, we can identify three: the ASA Summit, the ASPA Summit, and the SOPACAS Summit. So it is not, I mean, they're not countries of the North because they are only the ones on the coast from Africa and Latin America.
Thank you. I think we have time for one question more. Any other question? Maybe taking the advantage of the mic, I'd like to ask maybe for the boards, but nowadays we have more maybe for Veronica, but nowadays we see the countries like US and Argentina who deny the climate change, who actually they are converting to deniers to climate change. So I think we have a new scheme of the international geopolitical relationships, and in that means I wanted to ask if any country in Africa may agree with this kind of thought and start to act like cooperating to these countries like US or Argentina. I was wondering if there are any country like that, or if there are any movements like that in Africa. Que sí hay algunos países ahora en África que siguen a la corriente de negacionista de Donald Trump o de Argentina.
It's kind of the same question, but I think it's kind of an alarm, this kind of discourse, because in the end it's like a discourse, a political discourse around of deny the climate change. And yeah, they're mostly they are the right parties who deny this, no? And it's a political agenda behind this, which support this. Yeah, this is denying. But in Africa, I didn't hear about some specific country aligned to these ideas because of China. Also, it's an important actor in Africa. China have a lot of its investment in renewable energies with most of the continent. Sorry, most of the green technologies in the continent are from China, not exactly, for example, by the European Union or the United States. So, and Donald Trump put away the Paris Agreement another time when he came to this time to the presidential. So maybe it's kind of homework for me to investigate, to do some more research about this thing, because it will be interesting to see some African country aligned to these ideas. However, at this point, I couldn't say to you something specific, but I hope no. Honestly, I hope every country and organization could be aligned to the green. I mean, in a good way, not that the critical way that I've been explaining in my presentation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Well, Agustina, if you have, yeah.
Yes, I agree with Veronica in this point, because when you think about African countries, I mean, which is the position between African countries and China, and African countries and the States? So actually, the United States, it's not a very important partner today for the African countries, but yes, it is China. And the Belt and Road Initiative and the Green Belt and Road Initiative and the shift to the green policies of China in the African countries, I think that make African countries to be in line with Chinese discourse, since they are the ones that are investing in different projects and programs that they need in the different African countries. And on the infrastructure dimension, it has been in line with what Veronica said before. It has been a shift to what they are called the new infrastructures. That new infrastructures are the one associated with, I mean, not the traditional ones, not the connectivity infrastructures or productivity infrastructures, but the new infrastructures are the ones that has to do with energy and with all the policies that Veronica mentioned before. So maybe there it is an African country that is aligned with Trump idea or with Milei's idea, but I don't think so. I mean, Milei is absolutely disruptive in his discourse and also in his actions. And it is not an isolated action that he eliminated the Agency for South-South Cooperation, and that Trump in February this year closed the USAID agency and ended all the programs. And USAID was the main cooperation agency in African countries. So I don't think.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So, so I think we have we conclude the table. Well, I'd like to resume that, as Veronica mentions, I think that there are two conclusions that you had, that if the Global South should apply green energy programs, or if maybe Global North should compromise more, no, to stop mass consumption and apply more green energy programs. But we see that scheme is much more complicated. If we think about China, that you mentioned repeatedly, that because we should think, that consider the position of the countries like China or India, if we consider them still as Global South or not. This is wholly another question that we should talk, like maybe 1 hour more or 2 hours. But so the question is that all these are still South-South cooperation, or what we should call them. But I see the challenge that we have is that we definitely need new actors that transcend the old scheme of state-state relationship, as you mentioned. And with this word, we want to conclude this table. Thank you so much for the participation of 2 speakers and all the participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for everything.